Now let's try to find out what would the scale of our application look like. If you're not sure how will we come to some of these numbers and conversions, make sure to check out the estimations section of the course before proceeding. Since Messenger is a globally used platform, let's start with the world population, which is 8 billion. The population of US is 350 million. Since Messenger is heavily used in US, let's assume that 70% of the population uses the app. If you have some other number in mind like 50 or 40, that is also fine. We don't need this data to be accurate. Our focus is only on how we approach these numbers. Similarly, let's assume 70% population of India uses Messenger as well. 7 into 15 is 105. So let's approximate this with 110. So we get 1.1 billion. Now for the total customers including in the rest of the world, let's assume that the same number of customers are in the rest of the world. Since India has a very big population, so our total customers will be twice the customers in India and US combined. Adding 245 million in 1.1 billion can be ignored for simplicity of calculation, and 2.2 billion can be approximated to just 2 billion. An app like Messenger has freedom to spend more on its marketing and will be more adapted by various businesses on Facebook. So let's assume the app will grow 10% year by year for next 5 years. So the total users after 5 years will approximate to 3.2 billion. Now, although we have calculated total users, the users that are active daily will be a lot less. For an app like Messenger, active users could be mostly the teenagers and business owners. So let's assume that a healthy percentage like 40% of the total users will be active daily. So 40% of 2 billion comes out to be 800 million. Similarly, for 10% growth in DAU for 5 years, we get 15 billion daily active customers. Next, let's estimate the throughput that our app needs to handle. Let's assume that on average, one user sends 25 texts per day. So the total messages per day will be 25 into DAU, which comes out around 20,000 million, which can be converted to 20 billion messages per day. To convert this into second, we divide it by hours in a day, by minutes in an hour, by seconds in a minute. The two zeros can be cut and 36 into 24 can be approximated to 1000. So we get 200,000 requests per second. Now let's see how much data for these messages do we need to persist. Let's assume the size of one message on average to be 100 bytes. Although most of the daily chats would be quite smaller than this, a lot of the messages are quite bigger than this as well, like forwards or business connects. So 100 feels like a fine number to me. We calculated earlier the total messages per day to be 20 billion. So the total storage we will need is 20 billion multiplied by 100 bytes, which gives us 2000 billion bytes. If you remember from the calculations section, 2000 billion bytes can be converted to 2 billion kilobytes, to 2 million MBs, to 2000 GBs, and finally to 2 TBs. For 5 years of storage, we get 2 TB into 365 into 5. 5 by 2 is 10, so we get around 3.6 petabytes of storage. Finally, let's see how much content over the bandwidth do we need to handle. Earlier, we estimated the throughput to be 200,000 requests per second. So with each message of 100 bytes on average, the total I/O we get is 200,000 into 100 bytes. This comes out to be 20 MBs per second. To handle spikes on some occasions like maybe festivals, we should handle up to 5 times the traffic. So we are looking at bandwidth of 100 Mbps.